Jesus Christ, he was a sheep herder, and so the natives, they value sheep in a lot of ways because their wool can be used for clothing, and their body is used for food, and they eat everything. So when they call it the Red Land, because back then, a long time ago, when they had the long walk, the military would come in and push all the sheep off the cliff of the mountains, the mesas, and all their blood from when they're pushed off ran through the lands, and that's why they call it the Red Lands.
Makes sense. And they did that, and then they burned the corn, right?
To reduce the livestock, yeah.
Yeah, and then they burned the corn.
So sad.
And by the way, if any of you've seen the photographs of where they lived at Monument Valley, whoa, I mean, could you think of a more beautiful, stunning setting living beyond those towers, those beauties? I mean, and so, but Kit Carson, who was in Ogden, there's a marker right down here. I did a video this weekend right here on Washington Boulevard about Kit Carson, supposedly the first expedition around the lake. And out at Fremont Island, I take people out there. I can show you where the cross is. And so he named it Disappointment Island. Disappointment Point is what they called it, because they got here, went around there, which Father Escalante, if they just listened to the natives, they already knew. All they had to do was go ask some natives, but they didn't know how to speak the language. Ike did, Potter, my thing, but so they knew that it was a big salt lake, it was an inland lake, but they didn't ask, so they went around, oh God, we see this, it's an inland, it's got to be the Great Salt Lake, you know, so they worked on nothing, you know, but some big deer and some big elk, but nothing in the water, nothing to extract. So Governor Herbert at the ceremony out there, you know what his line was? He said, we're celebrating the extraction industries. His exact words, the extraction. So there was nothing to extract out of the Great Salt Lake. So they call it Disappointment Point. That's on top of Fremont, that rock. Kit Carson's got a cross carved out there. But then Kit Carson, of course, went to Mexico. And this is a great story about Kit Carson. He would ride his mule from New Mexico and or Utah to the White House. He'd ride it all the way to the Missouri. Then, you know, have to go across and get it right, you know, because there were no roads from there, in 6 days. This is the kind of guy he was. And so they would say, the president would say, oh, I gave him a bed, would, you know, whatever. And he says, every time I'd get up in the morning, he'd be sleeping out on the White House lawn in his bedroll. But I've read lots about, and I know as far as the natives goes, because he had a native wife down there in Taos or New Mexico, whatever it was. And did he change his ways later? Or is he written into history of being the longest walk guy? Now that's a big debate. There's a big debate. Was he the killer that he's labeled to be? Did he burn the corn? Did he push the sheep off the cliffs? Or is he just the fall guy? I mean, he was obviously, if he did it, he was taking orders, but just think about that. You can't, I mean, they got, because the American populace was tired of the Indian killers, and they, you know, they were saying no more. The American populace said, okay, we'll do it subtly. Now, isn't that what they do? I mean, they do it subtly, so what a way to get rid of them. What a cruel thing. That's what's going on in the Pacific Ocean now. The starvation event on whales. Everybody says, oh, maybe too many whales. Can you imagine a mammal starving to death? Think about a way to die. Oh, my God. I can't think of a word. I mean, I had leukemia. I was in a bone marrow transplant, so I went without food and water for a long, long time. And you see the picture, I look like I'm starving to death.
I saw your pictures.
I can't imagine a worse way. Well, leukemia's horrible. So let's starve them out. I mean, human beings. And so it wasn't that long ago, but it is what it is in the past. You know, we live in today's world and we go forward. We try to be better, make things better. But if we cannot talk about the reality of the past, and we cannot bring everyone together and celebrate all people, all places. We're all natives now, and we cannot celebrate together and be friendly. Now, I was told a story. This is the second or third person that told me at the powwow some counter, because, you know, they sell the native food and native lots of stuff. My little grandson's got the most beautiful native sweater he wears to school and backpack. And, you know, my other grandson, it was on my other grandson's birthday. He says, no. He says, and he's a good little white boy, and then I have the little half Mexican. They're a week apart. They're beautiful. And he says, no, 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 no. He says, I got $200 for my birthday through different family members. He says, no, Grandpa, you taught me we share. So he says, his own cousin, he says, here, we buy, you get half, I buy half. So they went, and I said, you buy anything? And they bought these beautiful sweaters and Navajo backpack. And you saw them
I saw him
at the
I saw him.
powwow.
I saw him. when you guys were getting the
How
the
beautiful.
tacos, yeah.
And we had like some really old timers come from different areas, and they were thanking us, and they knew the language and everything. They
Nice.
looked like
Awesome.
white Americans,
Yeah. There's a few
they
of us that
were-
left.
Yeah, they spoke the Dene language,
Yeah.
and they talked to me, and they thanked us for having this powwow because they haven't had one in so long.
Well, there's a
but-
lot of old Ogdenites who learned the native ways, and I mean, believe me, this was a passionate subject around here. There were plenty of people whites that assimilated into the native culture, including myself. There were thousands of them in this town. We celebrated it. We loved their freaking ways of life, and we wanted to know more about it. And we spent time learning the one. I know a little bit, you know. I'm terrible at it, but but there was reports that some of this stuff got bought with counterfeit money. There was some counterfeit money, and it was stamped on the back, Trump dollars.
And I was in charge of the food stand, so I didn't really flip the money over and really see, you
She
know,
didn't have the time
because
to check the
it was
bills.
a long line. We had
Oh
a lot
boy,
of
we had those
people,
big buffalo burgers. They were
especially
good.
It was a
Especially
fast
when
pacing.
you're in the food stand. I mean, you go there with good intentions. You hope people are there enjoying themselves, and you know,
And they
it's
were.
for the community. So, I mean, really, it's like you know, it's
Just a handful of smartasses who think,
Yeah.
you know, they got to think, you know, so we still always deal with those elements. But I do not believe that to be mainstream. I think culturally, politicians try to make it mainstream like they did on this, which pisses me off. You know, they can go into their ideological ways, these politicians, but I don't think the masses, you know, we get socially engineered, left, right paradigm, but I don't think that most people, they're not biting.
like for me, I understand that it was intentional, you know,
Yes.
and it does. It when I first found out, it did sting a little, but
Sure.
because of that reason. But at the end of the day, I mean, overall, what we do is for the people, and that's who we give back to.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is our school. We support Ogden. We support Weber. They support us back, and it's about the community and bringing everyone together. So I mean,
Well, that's what this radio is
overall,
about.
It was a successful powwow. So
It was great.
We had a few counterfeit money, and I feel bad for if they used the money for some of the vendors, you know. But
Yeah.
like overall, it was very successful.
It was
event.
great.
Mhm.
And so that's my point about this renaissance of this radio station, which this is the professor over there. They booted me. I'm the freaking, you got, you know, you go into imperialism, you got your serfs and your indentured slaves and you want to be lords, whatever, and then you get all the way to the bottom, the peasants. Well, now that I'm 86 and I'm a full-time activist, I'm under the pyramid. So this is the professor now. Manny. So I just come by invitation. I'm just a lowly, no good scumbag, no good under the pyramid activist trying to save the world.
You're a great man.
Yeah.
Kevin,
Well.
you know we love you here.
Yeah, and so I like to be here, and college radio is about the community. This is what we're trying to renaissance, just what you said. This is about the student, the community at large. This is our place. We all live here. We're Ogdenites, even though Petersky Ogden was probably never in Ogden. You know, whatever it is, this is our town, this is our place, and you know, the history matters to me. I'm very passionate about it.
In KWCR, we always our powerhouse.
Always. And I was involved with this radio station in the late 70s and the early 80s, you know, which we're bringing it back, right? And
88
so,
won the beat.
right, that's what we were.
Exactly.
And so we want everyone's voice heard. And so we're hoping to get some young people like our beautiful guest today.
Alexis Blackman,
So this is
thank you
important.
for being in the show.
And-
Thank you very, very much for being in the
Yeah,
show.
we really appreciate you. I learned a lot from you today, by the way, just in the short conversations. I already learned a whole bunch from you. And so, you know, we're always learning, right? From each other. That's the native way, right?
Yes.
We communicate, we talk, we visit with each other, and we learn stories.
And we can smoke the piece. Piece back.
Well, not in this state. You know, and by the way, elders matter, and I've got my wisdom build, and I'm not young. My dad used to say to me all the time, my dad was a genius who died young of leukemia, nuked to death in the Nevada test site. He used to say, boy, shut the bleep up and get to work. You're way too pretty for an opinion. I knew what he meant. it takes time to be an elder in wisdom, but we can learn from young people too. I mean, so we listen to each other and we communicate with each other. We don't scream and yell at each other, even though political dogma, whatever. We're like, hey, we listen to each other.
We debate.
We talk.
One
we
of the
visit.
wise things that I've heard in my time is that anybody could be loud and voice their opinion, but not a whole lot of people have that wisdom to just be quiet and understand and listen first.
Yeah, and that's what we do when we're young. I was a real quiet kid, you know. Everybody used to see teachers say, you don't say much and stuff. But I was soaking it. I'm not so quiet now, am I? Oh, no, I scream and yell. And so, by the way, my favorite ceremony, and I did it at San Onofre, and I've done it multiple times, and I'm up in their face. I learned to do a staking ceremony at a very young age with drums. And I use whatever I can. I'll use sticks, whatever. I'll beat on anything. But I know how to do a staking ceremony, and oh, I do them. And I don't do them nice and soft and quiet. I do the way I was taught by the Shoshone and the Navajo, and I'm loud. And so they're
and
important.
That's okay. I mean, today we have the platform for our voice to be heard. We have social media, we have internet, we have so many things where we can voice their opinion, their voice, the things that are concerning to us, especially as tribal members, because they're third worlds here in our own country, in our backyards. A lot of people, they fail to recognize a lot of the native tribes, the elders, they don't have electricity, they don't have running water, they don't have the necessities that they need. I mean, even in my own hometown, they didn't have any colleges where I could go to, so I had to move off the reservation to come to school here. And the only reason why I ended up here was because this is the only college that I knew about where a relative came to. So, I mean, earlier I met a couple of students that they were natives, and they were I told them, I said, ask me anything you want to know about this school, I'd be happy to help you. And they were just straight fresh out of high school, and they're considering their options, and they were asking me about housing, they're asking me they were asking me about financial aid, how do you pay for it, and all kinds of things. But not only that, they want to feel like they have a safe place, like a connection, a community, something where they can relate to. So I told them about our powwow. I told them about our radio show. We have Indigenous Voices Radio. That's something that we do on our free time, just as a club. And I gave them those resources and helped them with some of their questions that they had. Helped them with scholarship information, because those are the kinds of things that they need to see from people who are in college and people who are there to help them and lead the way for them to feel like they could come here, feel safe, and just be a part of this community, because
that's
they're
important.
coming from different states. So
yeah, and so I learned from you today about, I didn't realize that the woman taking of the female, I didn't realize that that's still a thing. See, I learned something today.
Oh, it's a huge epidemic. That's why they had Wind River come out, and that was last year, and that was a big movie, box office movie, and so that kind of touched bases.
Now I got to go watch it.
Yeah, it touched bases on the missing murdered Indigenous woman, and the lady who, her name's Kelly. She's also one of the main actors in the film that's been filmed here in Yellowstone. It's supposed to be based in a Wyoming type of setting, but it's actually filmed here in Park City and Ogden and all over the place here in the Utah Valley. So
one last thing I want to say about, because we'll tie this into our great friend Damian Lillard.
Oh, yes.
So I want to talk a little bit. So Utah, he got no credit when he played here, right? Jazz didn't want nothing to do with him. Nobody talked about who's still playing. Are the Jazz still playing?
Why is he not playing with the Jazz?
Oh, what
happened there?
Well, he got drafted high up, but anyway, even the state turned their back on him when he played here. It was Jimmer. Now, are the Jazz still playing? Nope. Is Damian? Oh, yeah. He's still playing. They're in the Western Conference Finals, and he's our guy. He's fantastic. But I want to say this briefly. When I was a little boy, that's why I love basketball. I was a little kid. I had this fantastic teacher, Mrs. Smith. This is T.O. Smith's wife, which is our first female governor's Pauline Walker's mom was my second grade teacher.
Oh, wow.
And so out there, and she knew so much about Native culture, everything. She says, Kevin, you know, because I went to West Weaver Elementary out there in the boonies on the marsh. The wigwams were still there, you know, and I was fascinated with it. And she's like, let me show you. She says, come here. She found this, she had this old book. She says, you know, the natives used to play a sport very similar to basketball for centuries.
It's called res ball.
Yeah. And I learned about it, and so then I started paying attention to native basketball teams, high school and I don't know if any of you've ever been, but I go to the tournament up at the Bannock tournament up there in Bannock County in Idaho, and the Wind River teams come in.
They play like.
Oh, are they good? Are they good?
Even though they have like no concrete or the roughest rugged up thing or the worst basketball hoop, they still go for it.
And I'm telling you, in Montana, they win the state championship in Montana every year, the native kids, but none of them end up in college playing, which that's a whole other thing. But that's why I think I like basketball so much. It's such a pure thing, and they've been playing it for centuries. So,
well, I don't blame him because, I mean, there's still a lot of racism here in Utah. And, I mean, you think about why Carl Malone left for the same reason, you know. Because
Rick Mahorn called Carl Malone Uncle Tom because Larry Miller was very racist to Carl Malone.
Oh, yeah.
And so Rick Mahorn called him Uncle Tom. And so then Carl Malone gave Rick Mahorn the elbow to the head, gashed him open, whatever. But it was a big deal. Racism, like I said, racism, do not kid yourself, is alive and well in this place in a big, big way. Now, this incident that went on down with the Jazz over and over and over, so I know Donovan Mitchell personally.
Yeah.
And I know him from Brooklyn. I rode on the plane with Donovan here right after he got drafted. I sat with him.
Wow.
And I told Donovan this story. I says, you know, I didn't realize he'd be this good. But I says, you know, I knew him from Brooklyn. He's a Brooklyn kid. And my daughter was living in Brooklyn. She lived very close to him, and I used to go watch him play in high school. And so we rode on the plane together. And I said, Donovan, did you watch Kevin Durant when those two fans were up on the front row, were right up in his face? There's a lot of racism in Utah, in Utah basketball. And that was that year. That was 2017, the playoffs in 2017. And I says, Kevin Durant went off and scored the last 17 points of the game while those guys were joining. Never missed a shot in the fourth quarter. And you know what Donovan Mitchell said to me?
What?
He looked at me and he says, don't feed the lion. And so now it's playing out with Donovan. Now it's played out with Chris Paul. Now it's played now that Gail Miller made a statement, but the racism in that arena, I had season tickets when the Jazz were first here.
Yeah.
That had gone kind of away in the 70s or 80s, but boy, is it reared its ugly head again. And we saw this in this ceremony, this 150th anniversary ceremony. Look, Mitch McConnell's wife spoke. You know, she's the Secretary of Transportation, okay? She mentioned Chinese a little bit. We saw 25th for 3 days. You know, we're talking 14, 15 hours a day.
Right.
We had not one native dancing group. We had not one native speaker. We had not one Chinese speaker. And if you don't think that's racist, you know nothing about what's going on in Utah right now.
Well, did they have a drum group?
No. Maybe out at the ceremony they might have. It was so crowded I might have missed it, but I didn't see it, but they could have. And I think maybe out there at the promontory.
I had some friends who were from Sunwater, and they were on...
At promontory?
Supposed to do a performance, so...
But I might have missed it. And you know, I can only cover so much. It was crowded. But
you cannot cover the whole thing.
But on 25th Street, which we had for 3 days, which this is Ogden, I saw none. And I was there all 3 days as much as you know, it's possible that I might have missed something.
Like officially on the program.
Well, it wasn't there. And I'm friends with Sarah up here, who runs Special Collections, who got the grant, and she can verify all this. She's like, no, they told us to stand down, because we're Ogden. And by the way, Weber State has always had a nice native group here in this union, you know, and we're bringing it back. And these young dancers that were the powwow who have learned, I'm friends with what's her name, she works over the hospital, her sons who did the Shoshone Prayer on your radio show. What's his name? I'm friends with his mother.
Nadina.
I wasn't here for that.
But
Nadina.
He's fantastic.
Yes.
And so we have some. You know, it's not all gone. And, you know, isn't that what the word genocide means? It's like I call the Pacific genocide on the ocean. I never said extinction. And I always use the term. Everybody says, oh, it's going to go. I use the word genocide. Now, I got that word from a Utah Who was Wallace Stegner? Wallace Stegner, who wrote, and you ever read his books? I mean, the greatest Western writer, Wallace Stegner, on the 100th anniversary. If you think the Germans invented genocide, you know nothing about this place. We taught them. So, we've wiped out a lot, but you ain't going to kill that's the point. We have to hang on and keep these cultures alive. Let's hope the whales can hang on. Let's hope the salmon can hang on. Let's hope a few starfish hang on. Let's hope a few counterculturists and historians who know the truth can hold on just enough with a U2 camera and that we can respawn. Let's not extinct our old cultural ways. Let's not kill them all the way out. That's why I use the word genocide. They're still natives. Did they alter them forever? Oh, absolutely. But it's not extinct. The salmon are not extinct. The whales are not extinct yet. So we have to fight for the last one. I was given 2 months to live with AML leukemia. And if I had listened to them, they almost extincted me. I'm a 1%er. But the light it got in me. I walk the coast, and I'm very spiritual. I do this meditation. I say my native prayer every morning, and people watch me do it in California. I flip the tomato soup can, I do this stretch, and I call it angry yoga. But I do this crazy spiritual prayer every morning, which is getting the bad energy out of me, getting the good light in me.
Yeah.
And so we keep going.
In culture, we just run.
Oh, can they run? Oh, okay. Like I said, I started off that story. I'll never forget that with his hair going. And Coach Reed.
Saw you laughing and rolling earlier.
Yeah, and he takes out his stopwatch. And, my next coach was, this is important, I got invited to the Nathan Barker, which is the #1 junior high meet in the country. I was invited to it. I ran at it in the 9th grade at BYU. That's how good of a distance runner I was. I ran against Icestone. I beat Icestone sometimes, but I could never do it now. But this, I'll never. And then Lamar Hershey was my second coach. He was terrible, but Gary Reed was his name, and he took me up for this very reason. Culturally, it wasn't about running. It was about understanding culture. And he took out his stopwatch and he says, "Kevin, look at that." I says, "He just broke the state record." Yeah.
Wow.
So we'll let it go there.
Natives are very competitive.
Oh boy.
I don't know what it is, but
Little Red Lopez boxed out of here.
I'm very competitive too. When I play basketball or some kind of sport or something, I just come around other natives and I'm competitive.
So, but we had a great famous gym here. Jack Dempsey lived here. Little Red Lopez fight out of here. And my one buddy says, "You remember when we boxed?" He says, "Do you remember the gym at the Intermountain Indian School?" And I says, "Oh yeah." He says, "Those guys wouldn't quit." "Oh my God, you didn't want to fight those guys." And I said, "Oh, I remember." You ain't a kidding. They were some great fighters in this town. And a lot of them were freaking, they were tough as nails, boy, and competitive.
They started a club last year, and they had the first boxing match last year. It was around this time in the summer. And it was really cool because they had them against other boxing clubs, and it was like the Navajo versus Mexico, and you know what I mean? It was awesome.
Just think about the fights.
Yeah.
Navajo versus Mexico.
Well, there
Mexican
was women
boxers are
and
fantastic
something
fighters.
else.
yeah, there was women and men in that.
Whoa.
So it was awesome.
Whoa. So the sweet science, I'm not a big MMA guy. I don't like it. I was a good boxer when I was a kid. I like the sweet science.
I used to do boxing too.
I like this beautiful sport. I like to watch guys like Sugar Ray because he was so beautiful. Move, and then, of course, Hands of Stone. That would be Roberto Duran.
I think that's just coming out like more because it's more like cardio these days, and it's a way for natives or the youth to just really like get out their aggression and just.
Well, that's my whole anti-yoga. I got to get it out. We can't keep it bottled up. I call it the self-internalization of strife. We got to externalize it somehow, right? Because we got plenty to, we intuitively know a lot of things are wrong. We can't just bottle it up. We got to find a way to get it out somehow.
You need a way to just let it out instead of using the bottle. So
one of the
Yeah.
ways is doing sports.
Yeah.